How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be going over 1.4, day 2, and we'll be starting on example 4 on the 1.4 part of the notes. So here, we're given the information in the table, and we're going to write an equation that gives g of x as a function of f of x. But the problem here is I don't have a g of x, right? What I'm given here is this g inverse of x, right? But remember, the relationship between inverse functions and the regular function is that they're just flipped. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip this x of inverse x table to get my x of g of x. So I get 3, negative 21, negative 10, negative 13, 8, negative 11, 0, negative 27, negative 5, negative 7, and then finally 1, negative 19. I flipped these x's and y's to get my new x of g of x table. You flip the x's and y's, you get your new table. But the problem with this table here is that it's not ordered from least to greatest, right? So I'm going to reorganize this table to put it from least to greatest. And I'll put it right here next to g of x just to make it a little easier to compare the tables. So x, g of x, when I reorganize from least to greatest, I get negative 10, negative 13, negative 5, negative 7, 0, negative 27, 1, negative 19, 3, negative 21, and 8, negative 11. So far, all I've done was create my g of x table by flipping my x of g inverse table. Because that's the relationship. You flip the x's and y's, you go between your inverse and your regular g of x function. All right, so this function right here in red is my new x of g of x table. I'm going to delete the scratch work right here so I have a little more room to work. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out the relationship between the x's, the x f of x and the x g of x table, right? And this is a problem we did very similarly in 1.3. It's a problem very similar to this. So we're going to go through this a little quickly. So first, remember, I'm going to deal with the x's first. So I want to see, well, I'm always going to see, is there an h value that goes from negative 8 to negative 10, negative 3 to negative 5, 2 to 0, et cetera, et cetera? Is there an h value to take me from the x value of my f of x function to my x value of my g of x function, right? In this case, I'm a little lucky because negative 8 minus 2 gives me negative 10, negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5, 2 minus 2 is 0, 3 minus 2 is 1, 5 minus 2 is 3, 10 minus 2 is 8. So I have a consistent h value that when I subtract it with my x's on the f of x table, it gives me the x's on my g of x table. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Gives me the x's on my f of x table. Right there. So I know that my h value is negative 2, or my bx plus h, my transformation rule, is h minus 2. So I know my h value now, right? H is when you subtract your shifts left and right, and it looks like my graph for the x values, all it did was shift to the left by 2. So my h value is 2. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the g of x's. I'm going to see, is there a consistent k value that will always take me from f of x to g of x? And in this case, there really isn't, because negative 4 minus 9 gives me negative 13, and negative 7, minus 0 gives you negative 7. Right, so there's no consistent k value that's always going to give me my transform g of x points. So we're going to have to work a little harder here. Let's actually do some blue. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to see the distances between the y's, and I'm going to see how much did they shrink or stretch by or compress by, really, between the f of x's and the g of x's. So from negative 4 to negative 7, we subtracted 3. From negative 7 to 3, we added 10. From 3 to negative 1, we subtracted 4, 1 to 0, we added 1, and then from 0 to negative 5, we subtracted 5, right? So that's the distances between my y's. And now I need to figure out the distances between my g of x's, right? So from here to here, we added 6, then we subtracted 20, and then we added 8, and then from there to there, we subtracted 2, and then finally we subtracted 10, right? So that's what's happening right now, right? So we went from negative 3 to positive 6, a distance of 10 between your y's, so a distance of negative 2, a distance of negative 4 to a distance of positive 8, 1 to negative 2, negative 5 to negative 10, right? So those distances, if I'm trying to figure out the relationship between the two, the distance between them is going to be -2. That's because if I take that -3 right here, if I can get this to work right, this -3 right here, that -3 times some a value should give me this +6. Or in other words, a equals -2. And I can see that works for all these as well. 10 times -2 is -20. -4 times -2 is +8. 1 times -2 is -2, and -5 times -2 is -10, +10. Sorry, this should be +10 there. Looks like I can't add numbers. This should be a +10. -20, 21 to -11 is a +10, sorry. So -5 times -2 is +10. So I have my a value, right? So now I also know that my a is -2. So far I have my a and my h. I know I don't have a b value, and all I need to do now is solve for my k. So for my k values, for this problem, what I could do is I could just plug in a point. I know that my transformation rule for the y's, it should be ay plus k. I know my a value, I don't know my k value. So I know if I plug in an f of x value for y, it should give me a g of x value. So I have -2 for a times some y value. Let's use -4, the very first f of x value, plus some k value that I don't know should equal the point that it transforms into, which is -13. So what I get is 8 plus k equals -13, or that k equals -21. And that's what your k value is going to be. So here, k equals -21. All right, so I have my k, h, and k value. I have everything I need, so I'm just going to plug it all into my equation. So what I end up getting is -2 from the a value times f of x minus 2, so we get x plus 2, all plus my k value of -21. And let's actually write this a little more properly. That should be g of x equals -2 times f of x plus 2 minus 21. And that's going to be my problem, my answer for number 4. All right, so now for example 5, I'm told to use the graph of h of x for each of the following. So I have h inverse of -1 should equal some number. I need to solve that out. All right, so here, remember h inverse and h of x are inverses of each other. So if I'm saying I have h inverse of -1, that's telling me that -1 is my y value for my h of x points. So -1 is the y value of the h of x point, and I need to figure out what my x value is, because h inverse of -1 is going to give me the x value of my h of x, because h inverse of -1 is the y value of the inverse function. So I need to figure out the x value of the regular function to get the y value of the inverse function. Remember, the x's and y's flip. So for when y equals -1, what I'm going to do is go to where y equals -1. So y equals -1 right here. And I see that this line, that red line I just drew, where y equals -1, intersects with the regular graph, the h of x function, right here, at an x value of 6. So that tells me that the h inverse of -1 function equals 6. Because that's what you get, right? When h of x, the point is 6, -1. So that means the y value of the inverse function is going to be 6. That's what you get. Now I need h inverse of -4. So it's just a composition of of the same function, really. So we're going to do this 2 times, right? So now I need to figure out what h inverse of -4 is, or in other words, what's the x value what's the x value of h of x when y equals -4? So we'll do the same thing. I'll go to -4. I draw my line, and I see that they intersect at a y value of 7. So that means h inverse of -4 is just 7. So I can rewrite this as h -1 of 7 now. So I'll do the same thing again, but I'll go to 7 this time, draw my line, and I see it intersect right there at -10. So that tells me h inverse of 7 equals -10. And now I have g of x equals 6 plus 2 times h of -14 over 3 times x plus 1 we need to find g inverse of -2, right? So let's actually erase all of this and start on part C. All right. So now part C, we have this equation. I need to find g of x, and I'm not given g of x, right? So, but g of x is told in terms of h of x. So I can still figure this out. It's going to take a little thinking, a little more work to do, but I can figure this out. All right. So this -2, or this g inverse of -2, this right here is the y value of g of x. This tells me that if I have some point g of x, where it's in the form x comma g of x, right? That's the y value. So it's telling me g of x equals -2. So I plug in -2 for g of x. I get -2 equals 6 plus 2 times h of that -14 over 3 x plus 1. And I need to solve this out now. So I subtract that 6 on both sides to get -8 equals 6 plus, sorry, we just got rid of that 6, to 2h of -14, if I can write properly, 3 x plus 1. I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides to get -4 equals h of -14 over 3 x plus 1. And now I need to know, when does h of x equal -4? All right, so what this is saying is that I need an h of x function. What this is saying right here is I need to have some h of x to equal -4, right? Where that x value will equal all this nonsense down here. So I'm going to go back to my graph, and I'm going to see what do I get when I put -4. And what I get is that x value of 7. So what that means is that everything underneath that underlined part needs to be 7. That -14 over 3 times x plus 1 has to equal 7. So we get -14 over 3 times x plus 1 has to equal 7. And remember, ultimately, I'm solving for the x value. So once I solve this part out, I'm done. So I'm going to solve this out. I'll multiply by 3 on both sides. So I get -14 times x plus 1 equals 21. Divide by -14 on both sides to get x plus 1 equals 21 over -14, which we can reduce that down to 3 over -2. Subtract 1, x equals 3 all over -2 minus 1, which is the same thing as 2 over 2, right? So we end up getting -5 over 2. So my x equals -5 over 2. All right, now let's go on. For problem 6, we're told about a function representing the radius of a sphere in terms of its volume. So remember that volume equals 4 over 3 pi r cubed. And I need to write the function in terms of, I need to write the function that's representing the radius of a sphere. Or in other words, I need to write this as r equals whatever it's going to be. So I'm just going to solve this for r. So I'll times both sides by 3 over 4. So I get 3v all over 4 equals pi r cubed. I'll multiply both sides by 1 over pi. So I get 3v all over 4 pi equals, these pi's cancel out, r cubed. Then cube both sides, right? Take the cube root of both sides to get rid of that r cubed. And I get that r equals the cube root of 3v all over 4 pi. All right, so let's keep going on now. So now I need to write, for example 7, I need to write a function representing the height of a square pyramid in terms of its volume, given that each side of the base is 2 square root 2 times as long as the height. So that's important right there. Each side of the base is 2 square root 2 times as long as the height. So the volume of a square pyramid is 1 over 3 multiplied by base times height. All right, so a square pyramid, it's going to look something like this, right? That's what it's going to look like, similar to that. and guess one more right here, right? And I'm told that each side of this pyramid is 2 square root 2 multiplied by the height. So it's a square, right? The base of this pyramid is a square. So that means this volume will be 1 over 3 times 2 root 2 times the height, all squared, multiplied by the height. So that's squared. If I multiply 2 root 2 times h times 2 root 2 times h, what I get is 4 times 2 times h squared, right? Because it's all multiplied together, I can distribute that exponent to each part. So I get 4 times 2 times h squared, or that v equals 1 over 3 times 8 h cubed, right? 4 times 2 is 8, h squared times h is h cubed. So that's what I get, and I need to solve this for height. I need to know how can I rewrite this function as h equals. So what I do is I can multiply both sides by 3 to get 3v equals 8h cubed. Divide by 8 on both sides to get 3v equals 8 equals h cubed. And then take the cube root of both sides, right, to cancel out the h squared to get 3v over 8. The cube root of that equals h. And that is our final answer. So I had to go through this really quickly, guys. I'm sorry if it wasn't too clear. If you have any questions, please, guys, go to tutorials, enrichment, whatever you need. Ask your teacher, whoever it may be. Ask for help. But anyway, guys, hope you learned something from this video, and hope you have a great day.